Introduction on Coordinate Geometry. About the founder of coordinate geometry. What do you mean by coordinate geometry?
Mr. David is a new math teacher in the school. He is teaching a class 9 student whom he has never met. He wants to ask a question. Then how would he ask a particular student to stand up and answer the question? There may be many ways, right? Like he can point his finger towards that student, or either he can walk towards his or her seat, or he can say something like the person sitting in the 5th row and 4th column, or the person sitting in the right corner, or the first student in the second last bench. Which method do you think is more precise? Yes, you got it right. Method 3, that is by pointing out the position of the student. If Mr. David uses this method to point out a student, then he unconsciously using the principles of coordinate geometry. Now what exactly is coordinate geometry? And what are the examples of coordinate geometry in real life? So friends, today in this session we are going to learn about the basic concepts related to coordinate geometry. Also we are going to solve one question based on coordinate geometry. So that would be easy for you to understand. Coordinate geometry is an algebraic expression which we show on the graph of the Cartesian plane, where the position of the points on the plane is defined with the help of an ordered pair of numbers, also known as coordinates. Now what is a Cartesian plane and coordinates? A Cartesian plane is a 2D plane which is formed by the intersection of two perpendicular lines known as the x-axis and y-axis. X-axis is a horizontal axis x dash and y-axis which is a vertical axis y dash. And their point of intersection is called as origin and is denoted by letter O. At this point both x and y are 0, 0. From the origin the values on the right hand side of the x-axis are positive, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. And the values on the left hand side of the x-axis are negative, that is -1, -2, -3, -4 and so on. Similarly, on the y-axis, the values located above the origin are positive, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, and the values located below the origin are negative, -1, -2, -3, -4 and so on. Now the x-axis and y-axis divides the Cartesian plane into 4 quadrants. That is first quadrant, second quadrant, third and fourth quadrant. Always start from this part and we have to go anti-clockwise. Now coming to the most important point, that is the terms which are used in coordinate geometry. Abscissa and ordinate. The abscissa is value of x and ordinate is the value of y. When we have to locate a point on the plane, it is determined by a set of 2 numbers. So first you have to write about its location on x-axis followed by its location on y-axis. Together the two will determine a single and unique position on the plane. The location of any point on a plane is expressed by a pair of values x, y, and these pairs are known as the coordinates, like we denoted origin O as 0, 0, if you remember. Suppose the value of x is 3 and the value of y is 2, and we have to locate this point on the graph. Now on the x-axis 3 is here and on the y-axis 2 is here. From these 2 points we will draw a perpendicular line, and the intersection point of the 2 lines will be the coordinate point, which is 3, 2. Now in first quadrant, value of x and y both are positive. In the second quadrant, the value of x is negative and y is positive. In third, x and y both the values are negative. And in the fourth quadrant, x is positive and y is negative. Now why do we need coordinate geometry? Coordinate geometry has various applications in real life. Some of the areas where coordinate geometry is an essential part includes in maps and navigation, that is GPS, in digital devices like computers, mobile phones, etc., to locate the position of cursor or finger, to map geographical locations using latitudes and longitudes, in aviation to determine the position and location of aeroplanes accurately.
The theory behind René Descartes' discovery of the Cartesian coordinate system happened one day as he was laying on his bed and saw a fly land on his ceiling, and he thought, looking at the squares that formed the ceiling, that if he were to have a starting point and he counted the number of squares over to the number of squares up, he could find the exact position of the fly. So he took 2 number lines and flipped one of them and made them perpendicular. And so one formed the x-axis, one formed the y-axis, and where they met was called the origin. That was 0, 0. And the Cartesian coordinate system, also known as a rectangular coordinate system, actually came from René Descartes' name. They took the cart off the back and said Cartesian, and became the Cartesian coordinate system. And within the Cartesian coordinate system, you classify a coordinate by the x and then the y. And that's how you determine the exact location of a point in space within this 2-dimensional plane.
Coordinate plane.
Line is. It has a 0 in the center, positive values at equal intervals on the right, which go on forever, and negative values at equal intervals on the left. A number on the right of a number will always be greater, and that on the left will always be smaller. We can easily give any number on this line an identity. If the point lies here, we can say that it is 1 unit to the right of 0. This point, for example, is 2 units to the left of 0. But what if we have a point here? How do we give point A an identity? To give such points an identity, we draw another line perpendicular to this one. We have positive values above 0 and negative values under it, all at equal intervals. These 2 lines are called the axes. The horizontal line is called the x-axis and the vertical one is called the y-axis. Now can we give this point an identity with the help of the axis? Of course we can. It is 2 units away from the y-axis and 3 units away from the x-axis. 2 units away from the y and 3 away from the x. Its identity would be 2, 3. In a fancy way, they are called the coordinates of point A. 2 is the x-coordinate, while 3 is the y-coordinate. Can we write the y-coordinate first and then the x? Nope, we cannot. The x-coordinate has to be written first. Why don't you try writing the coordinates of point B? It is 1 unit away from the y-axis and 3 units away from the x-axis. But wait, 3 units below the x-axis. So the coordinates will be 1, -3. So that's how we give points on the plane some identity. X-coordinate followed by the y-coordinate. These two axes divide the plane into 4 regions. This one, this one, this one, and this one. They are called quadrants. This region, where the x as well as the y values are positive, is called the first quadrant. The region to the left of it is called the second quadrant, y positive and x negative. This is the third and this is the fourth quadrant. It goes counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3 and 4. This plane that you see is called the coordinate plane, and we will be looking at more of it in the coming sessions.
What is Cartesian system?
We draw the x-axis and name it x-x. We draw the y-axis and name it y-y. How do we number the axis? Until now, we have only seen cases where we have numbered this side of the x-axis and this side of the y-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on the x-axis, and 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on the y-axis. The reference point or the origin is 0. On the left-hand side of the horizontal axis, just like the number line, we mark negative natural numbers -1, -2, -3, -4 and so on. Similarly, on this side of the y-axis, we mark -1, -2, -3, -4 and so on. Remember, all these are marked in equal intervals. Now let's take a random point somewhere on the plane and try to give it an identity. Say we have a point P here. It is 3 units away from the origin on the horizontal axis and 2 units away on the vertical axis. How do we denote the point then? We write it as 3, 2 inside round brackets. That's the identity of point P. But in mathematics, we do not refer to it as an identity. We call these the coordinates of point P. 3 is the x-coordinate and 2 is the y-coordinate. Here's something you really need to know. This is not the same as 2, 3. 2, 3 will be this point here. 2 units away on the x-axis and 3 units away on the y-axis. The order matters. Hence they are called an ordered pair. The value on the x-axis is always written first, and then we write the corresponding value on the y-axis. This entire system is called the Cartesian coordinate system.
What is Cartesian plane?
Let's look at the x and the y-axis. These axes are used to recognize a point on one plane. One single plane. This plane is called the Cartesian plane. As we can see, the Cartesian plane is divided into 4 parts or regions. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Each of them is called a quadrant. The quadrants are named in a particular order which we have to strictly follow. This region is the first quadrant. In the first quadrant, as we can see, the x as well as the y coordinates are positive. Moving in the anti-clockwise direction, we name this quadrant the second quadrant. In this quadrant, the x coordinates are negative while the y coordinates are positive. So remember, for the first two quadrants, the y coordinates are positive. Moving in the anti-clockwise direction, this is the third quadrant where the x as well as the y values are negative. This region is the fourth quadrant. The x coordinates are positive and the y coordinates are negative. Does that mean that every point on the plane will lie in any one of the quadrants? Let's mark a few points on the plane and see which quadrants they lie in. Let's assume I mark point A here. This point lies in the second quadrant. So we write A, 2 here. Point A lies in the second quadrant. Let's assume I mark point B here. This point is in the first quadrant. We write B first here. Point C is marked here as it lies in the third quadrant. We write C 3. And this is point D. It is in the fourth quadrant. Now let's look at something interesting. What about this point E? Which quadrant does it lie in? First quadrant or the second one? We say that point E lies on the y-axis. What about point F here? Yes, point F lies on the x-axis. What does this tell us? It means that each point on a plane lies either on one of the axes or in one of the quadrants.
To locate the position of an object or a point in a plane, we require two perpendicular lines. One of them is horizontal and the other one is vertical. The plane is called the Cartesian or coordinate plane and the lines are called the coordinate axes. The horizontal line is called the x-axis and the vertical line is called the y-axis. The coordinate axes divide the plane into four parts called quadrants. The point of intersection of the axes is called the origin. The distance of a point from the y-axis is called its. The distance of a point from the x-axis is called its y-coordinate or ordinate. So, if the abscissa of a point is x and the ordinate is y, then x, y are called the coordinates of the point. The coordinates of a point on the x-axis are of the form x, 0 and the coordinates of a point on the y-axis are of the form 0, y. The coordinates of the origin are 0, 0. If x is not equal to y, then x, y is not equal to y, x. And if x is equal to y, then x, y is equal to y, x. In each quadrant, the coordinates of the point are of the form plus first quadrant, minus in the second quadrant, minus in the third quadrant and plus in the fourth quadrant. Read the textbook and go through the example questions discussed in the pages 57, 58, 59 and 60. Complete the homework from exercise 3.2, first and second problems. Thank you all of you. See you in the next video.